Right, with voter turnout hitting record lows in recent elections, it is clear that many Nigerians are losing faith in the system. But what can be done to turn this around? Well, good morning and welcome to the agenda. I am Chike Obogu. Before we eat the main meal, let's have some dessert. Minister of Works Dave Umahi says the third mainland bridge requires urgent rehabilitation or complete reconstruction, with rehabilitation projected to cost 3.8 trillion naira and reconstruction 3.6 trillion naira. He explained that the bridge has problems with its underwater structures, making repairs unavoidable. Well, speaking at the recent Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the Presidential Villa in Abuja, Umahi disclosed that the council has also approved 493 billion naira for two major projects. And these projects are the 359 billion naira to rebuild Lagos Carter Bridge and 134 billion naira to upgrade the 152-kilometer Kano-Katsina Road. According to him, the 11.8-kilometer long Carter Bridge was declared irreparable after structural damage, while the cost of the Kano-Katsina Road rose due to economic factors. Let's get to listen to the Minister of Works, Dave Umahi.
We have resurfaced 11.8 kilometers by 14 lanes. And then we went to look at what is happening, under the deck, but, above the water. And so we gave that contract to Julius Berger, Ido Bridge, Carter Bridge, and Third Mainland Bridge at a contract sum of 65 billion. And their job was to, repair all the rusted piers, or in layman's terms, columns, and then look at the pie caps and then treat the pie caps because the rusts were exposed and rusting was taking place, very badly. And so in the course of doing this, we also embedded in their contract, let them look at the 2013, underwater investigation and 2019. So it's part of their contract. And so they now came up and said, look, Carter Bridge should be closed immediately against traffic, and that the Carter Bridge was beyond repair. It has to be a new construction. And they gave us a cost about 380-something billion to, rehabilitation, but said it was not feasible. But the one that was feasible was about 359 billion for brand new bridge. And they discussed with Deutsche Bank for their funding. Now, for Third Mainland Bridge, nobody submitted any proposal, but the same problem of underwater problems, in Carter Bridge, the same thing with the Third Mainland Bridge. And when we did a prorata of, what is to be done, if we are to rehabilitate, it came to about 3.8 trillion. And if we are to do a new construction, it came to about 3.6 trillion. And so we approached, Federal Executive Council and said, look, give us approval, to do two things under EPC plus F, to allow not less than 7, specialist contractors to undertake comprehensive investigation, comprehensive design, and a bidding to reconstruct it, brand new bridges, or to, do rehabilitation of these two bridges. Then the third one is to advertise for PPP.
Well, David Umahi there, interesting. Figures flying here and there, no more in millions, but now in billions and then trillions. Fixing the Carter Bridge and also looking at the Third Mainland Bridge. Well, earlier this year, the federal government had estimated the rehabilitation costs for the Third Mainland Bridge and Carter Bridges at 21 billion naira and 25 billion naira respectively. But unfortunately, now it has risen to as high as 3.6 trillion and 3.8 trillion naira. This is astronomical. Joining me this morning is a public affairs analyst and also an SDG advocate. Isiaka Babatunde Adigun Gbadamosi, it's good to have you on the agenda this morning.
Good morning, Chike. Thank you for having me.
Well, I tried as much as possible to get the full names.
Well, it's a good one.
You just listened to Dave Umahi here, and we'll start from this angle for that. If you look at these figures going astronomical, it goes to tell you something about the economy. It's showing you a failed economy. Earlier this year, it was 21 billion, 25 billion. And now it is 3.6 trillion and 3.8 trillion. Look at that spike. It shows a decay, sort of, in the economy of the country. What's your take on this?
Well, if I understood what the Honourable Minister was saying, I think he was making reference to rehabilitation, repairs, and I do know that there was a kind of a rehabilitation not too long ago,
yes,
which costed that amount, maybe 20 billion or thereabout. But the question I really want to ask is, what has happened over time? What was the lifespan of that bridge in the first instance? And why are we having challenges with it today? Is it a 20-year, 50-year lifespan? I do know that the Third Mainland Bridge has been in use for quite some time, and it's something that there's a lot of pressure on it. The same thing applies to Qatar Bridge. These are bridges that are in use all the time. But the question we have is, one of the things is our currency keeps losing value. And that also translates into what you have in terms of the cost of our projects. But the difference for me is huge. It's quite huge. Maybe would wait until when we see the proposed bidding of the various contractors, and they tell us what they are bidding for each of these projects, rehabilitation and reconstruction.
We have so many students studying civil engineering, and then we're still finding it difficult getting it right, especially when it comes to projections. You mentioned the lifespan of the bridge. Now, is it that there was no futuristic plan earlier that we'll have to spend so much at this time that Nigeria is bleeding economically, financially, to fixing these things now? It would have been averted, right?
Well, could it have been averted, really? Because for an infrastructure that is subjected to the kind of use they are subjected to, there will be a lot of wear and tear over time. The question I ask about the lifespan of that bridge is, if for every construction, for every project you do, there's always a projected lifespan, a time within which you might not reach to do any major repairs. And I think for a bridge like the Third Mainland Bridge, should be about 30 years or thereabout now. Qatar Bridge is quite a long one. For me, Qatar Bridge is justified. That's a bridge that has been around for close to 5 decades now. So considering the fall in our currency and the devaluation and all of that, yes, we might understand some of this cost. But I think the aspect you mentioned that has to do with the fact that we churn out graduates, experts in these various fields. One of my own challenge is the fact that we are always hasty to have contractors from outside or foreign contractors, to do this job. It means that over time, our own local contractors have not grown. Is it that they don't have the expertise, or we don't have confidence in them enough to get this job done? I think that's something we should take a look at.
And when these graduates come out without these jobs, without being engaged, they get to a point of salvage value. And at the end of the day, nothing.
You see, when you see some of these companies, especially those foreign companies, most of them will come in with expatriates. And you now ask the question, is it that we do not have people that are qualified to fill those expatriate vacancy? I think at this time of Nigeria, we have gone beyond that level. And the same thing that is happening in the construction industry is also happening in the oil and gas industry. The same thing. You have a situation, and I keep asking this question, is it possible that Nigeria is not yet able to perfect the technology in the area of oil and gas, or to perfect this technology in the area of construction? I have advocated severally that it is high time that we start looking at employing direct labor in doing some of this job. Maybe not like the Third Mainland Bridge, but there are jobs that you can employ direct labor. You can have people within the system. Let me cite a very interesting example. You want to do a rehabilitation job for the Polytechnic Ibadan, for instance, or University of Ibadan, or University of Lagos, and you have the Department of Engineering in those universities. You have students from 100 level to 400, 500 level. Why don't you put them into this job and let it be a direct labor job? Because there they will get experience, there they will also learn their craft, there they will also practice what they've been taught. So I think all of those things are things that we need to imbibe in our system so we can grow.
Right, now to the main meal. I talked earlier about voter turnout hitting a record high, or a record low, I beg your pardon. And in recent elections, especially from 2003 down, it's been dwindling.
Dropping, yes.
Yeah,
dwindling.
And it is clear that many Nigerians are losing faith already in the system, the electoral system. And then I asked this question, what can be done to turn it around? And then we start this discussion this morning. When you look at the current state of voter apathy in Nigeria, does it get at you? You know, we've seen some of these trends. Are you worried?
Well, I would say it's worrisome. It's worrisome. Just like you have said, if you look at the voting trend from 2003 till date, we've seen a continuous decline in participation in turnout in terms of election. I do not think it's due largely to lack of interest of the people in the electoral process. I think it's more of the electoral body itself and its ability to be able to reinvigorate or recraft itself such that people will see it in a different light and we're able to have better confidence in the process. Let me cite you a very interesting example of this. There are people who register in certain areas. Over time, they've moved away from those areas. There are people who register in certain local government states, and over time they've moved. But they still carry the card around. But they don't vote. Also, you have a lot of people, especially those in the security services, those in the media industry, who do not vote also on the election day due to the fact that they are on essential services. So, and all of these people have, most of them have voters' cards. So you look at it from the prism of all of these people who are supposed to make informed decisions, who are supposed to participate in the electoral process, due to maybe a duty call, they are not participating. That is one. Then you have people who have moved for one reason or another, relocation, who also cannot vote, and they will just stay away from it. So I think the electoral process needs to be simplified more.
Okay.
People are, it could be tiring when people go for voters card or get their voters card, and they keep on queuing endlessly. And the stress of doing that, many people will not want to go through that. I think we have the technology today that we can simplify that process much more, and also identify those who have moved from places to from one place to another, and encourage them to see how they go ahead and change their area of voting. That happened to me, but maybe because of my own consciousness and awareness, I took the time and the trouble of ensuring that I effect this change. But not many people want to do that, because when they look at what it takes to do all of that, they say, "Oh no, why should I bother?"
Well, it also happened to me. Moving from southeast to northwest, it was a very big issue. In fact, when I did that, I was disenfranchised in 2019. My card didn't come out before the elections. You know, eventually came out, and it was a funny thing. And
even when it comes out, when your card is out, it might turn out that on the day of the election you're on duty, duty calls.
Of course. For me, since
over 1,000,000.
2011, I've been on duty, but I still take my time out to vote.
Oh, okay.
You know, I still take that time out to vote.
Now that is somebody who has a commitment to civic duty.
Yeah.
But how many people have such commitments? You know.
Well, according to Yaga Africa, voter turnout peaked at around 69% in 2003. But it started declining. That same 2003 general elections, out of the 69% total number of registered voters, we had only 27.1% taking part in elections. And that's about 25 million out of 93 million in 2003. Now, and you say it is one of the lowest rates in Africa, contrasting sharply with countries like Rwanda or even Equatorial Guinea, where their turnout rates exceeds 98% from the records. Now, what do you think are the main causes behind this drop? Is it just disillusionment, or are there deeper systemic issues?
One of the systemic issues I want to point out, which I don't know whether INEC is conscious of it, or maybe they are working to ensure that they rectify it. The last election, I'm talking of the 2023 election.
Yes.
I went to my polling unit, and I took a look at the pasted list, and I could identify no fewer than 3-4 people who are dead, and they were still on the list. And you have such all over the place. Now, what is INEC doing to clean up this list to ensure that all of these names are not reappearing again and again? Because if you keep saying you have about 95 million voters, and maybe about 20 million of them are really not alive, no longer there to vote, then the narrative is not correct. So I think INEC should look at that aspect and look at how do they clean up this reoccurring. I'm talking of people who have passed on maybe 3-4 years earlier, you know. So that is on the one side. Then on the other side, INEC, I think for me, is not doing a good job with voters' education. Immediately after the election, the general election that is, they seems to go to sleep, and then until maybe when we have another cycle of election, especially maybe the off-cycle election, then you start hearing INEC. But it should be a continuous thing. There should be a continuous enlightenment of Nigerians as to why they have to be part of the process and all of that. Doing that at the time when the election is around the corner, for me, does not take home the message, really. Until such a time when INEC makes it a kind of a continuous duty, or maybe on a quarterly basis, or maybe on a biannual basis, to do continuous voter sensitization, then we'll now have this culture imbibed in Nigerians. Other than that, if we make it a 4-year thing all the time, people will not really get the message, and Nigerians will keep looking at it as, well, it's another 4 years, let's go and do the
It becomes a ritual.
It becomes a ritual and not a culture. And we should make it a culture such that we could imbibe over time.
You talked about the first systemic problem, which is the issue of updating the voter register.
Yes.
And now, beyond INEC, do we have an issue of documentation as a people in the country?
Well, as a people in the country, we do not. You see, let me say this and be clear about it. Nigerians are very simple people to govern and to manage.
Wow.
All you need is to put your house in order, get the system right. If the system is right, tell them how to follow this instruction, and you see Nigerians follow this instruction. I was having a conversation not too long ago with somebody, and I said, one of the things that we have not gotten right in this country is to have a proper database for the population of Nigeria. What do I mean? Such that if anybody, a child that is given birth to today, you could point the system and get his details.
Yeah.
I think it's time we do all of those things. And for me, I think it's not far-fetched. You have systems that are tied to every individual in this country. If you must access some government facility one way or the other. I mean, we should tie all of those things to people getting to do them. If you don't do this, then you cannot have access to this. So when we have such, it will be an incentive for Nigerians to ensure that they get themselves on these databases and platforms, so that they will now be able to would have a clear-cut understanding of who is who and who is where and what they are doing. For me, I think it has to do with the system itself. That's the system, whether it's the National Identity Registration Agency, or whether it's the INEC, or even what do you call it now, road safety. It's a systemic thing. We just need to be sure that we put the system in place and it works effectively. And without any problem, people will be on the data.
Well, it gets to show the integrity of the figures we get.
Exactly. It speaks to the, yes.
Okay. Well, beyond these systemic problems you've talked about, there's also this issue of insecurity and trust. And then these two seem to be interconnected one way or the other. So we've heard so much about vote buying, vote rigging, fraud, and all that. But then, how does this tie into apathy?
Well, vote buying and rigging, that is something we cannot do away with in our election until such a time that we are able to pick the Waste panel report and implement some part of it. I mean, implement most of it really effectively. And which of it am I talking about? I'm talking about the aspect that talks about having a tribunal that will deal with the issue of electoral offenses. From 2023 to this time, you might ask yourself the question, how many people have been prosecuted for electoral offenses? It speaks to the capacity of INEC to be able to prosecute people who have run foul of electoral offenses. That is on the one side. Then you now want to go to why do we have elections taking place and people are not really interested? They kind of feel that the whole process is flawed. It has to do with there is this continuous process where people kind of talk about the system and say, no, this system is bad. This system cannot be fixed, or this system is bought over, manipulated. Yeah. And as a result of that, they tend to want to stay away from the process. And for me, that's why I say it's also the duty of INEC to be able to embark on a continuous campaign, assuring the people of the integrity of the process and assuring the people that their vote would count. And the only way you can do this is for you to have a proper database, is for you also to adhere to the guidelines, the rules and regulation. Also, INEC must also look at the aspect of the players in the political system. When I say players, I'm talking of the politicians themselves. The politicians we have in Nigeria today, most of them are people who are inclined to having their way, whatever the case may be. They want to subvert the law as much as possible to have their way. And there is no way we can have people like that and then the system would function effectively. So INEC must look at that aspect. And that speaks to the area of this unbundling of INEC. Too many things INEC is doing. I also want to take it to the aspect of party management, registration, and functionality of parties. INEC is not able to, for me, manage and monitor parties effectively. And until we go to this, back to that document, the Waste panel document, to be able to look at how do we have a body that supervises political parties, that look at how they function, that look at their internal party democracy. All of this must be done so we can have a good product from the party to participate. And this good product will not be those who will now subvert the process and the guidelines that INEC has put in place. So that will make the process a bit much more less cumbersome and a lot of less pressure on INEC, as it were.
All right. I want to tell you a story of a bike man who said he will not vote again. I'll tell you his story after this break. It's still the agenda. Stick around. Don't go away.
Live from the heart of the action. Welcome to the nerve center of Next Level Broadcasting.
This is the OB van, where the studio meets the street.
Equipped with cutting-edge cameras, crystal clear audio, real-time switching, and broadcast control, we don't just capture moments, we deliver the experience live.
Anywhere, anytime, from stadiums to red carpets, breaking news to buzzing festivals, weddings, birthdays, and all sorts of ceremonies. We bring the world to your screen in real time.
It's not just a van, it's a complete mobile production house, a command center, a broadcast beast.
This is more than a broadcast. This is the OB van difference. Live, loud, limitless.
Ready to go live like never before? Book the OB van today and take your event to the world. One powerful broadcast at a time.
To book, call 0705 506 1061 or 0916 101 1061. Email marketing@dominion.org.ng or visit our socials on Instagram @Dominion Broadcast.
Dominion Broadcast, your channel of choice.
Welcome back from that break. It's still the agenda on Dominion Brokers Group. Yes, we've been talking about voter apathy, the causes. We'll still look at the solutions to all these. But I want to tell you a story about a bike man that I met recently, some 2 days ago. He was lamenting about the state of the country. And as I began speaking hope to him, he said, "Bros, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not voting again." I then asked him, "Do you have a voter's card?" He said, "Yes." "So why don't you want to vote again?" He said, "All the people he has been voting for the past 30 years, that they have disappointed him." I then asked him a question. Are your candidates, your preferred candidates, disappointing you, or is it the electoral process? If you can guess what he said all of the above. But I asked him, which one is better, your candidate or the process? And then he took a swipe at the process. And then I got to understand that he had issues with the way elections, he telling me that in the morning he will go and, stand under the rain or the sun for accreditation. At the end of the day, he'll come back to vote. And at the end of the day, he believes his vote will not count. And I told him, no. There's an umpire. An umpire counts it. And then a result is released. He shouldn't depend on social media figures. He said, no, my vote doesn't count. How are you sure your vote doesn't count? Mr. Isiaka Babatunde Adigun, what do you think you can tell this young man to change his mindset, for him to have a positive mindset?
Well, one of the things that has really affected our electoral system is this pessimism and people peddling it, especially on the social media. Yes, there are challenges with the electoral system. INEC has a lot of challenges and all of that. But over time, for anybody, for any observer who has observed our electoral process over time, I'm talking of from 1999 till date, we see that there has been quite a number of improvements. There used to be a time in this country where we used to have 98%, 99% voter turnout. I don't know if you remember. In some states, they record 98%, 99% voter turnout. That is an impossibility. We know it's not, but today, that is not the case anymore. Today, we have a system of verifying who votes, at what point, and a system, there are systems to check all of these excesses. There used to be a time that figures used to fly around, but that is not the case anymore. I think that such a person needs to be encouraged to understand that, yes, you have problem with politicians. Politicians will tell you so many things.
Promise and fail syndrome.
And they will not fulfill it. That is on the one side. But that also speaks to the political elites. The very instance people lose faith in what you call democracy, then you are warming up for anarchy. Because there will be a time when people at a point will not even be participating in the process, and they will be ready to take the laws into their hands. And it also speaks to the fact that the politicians must, as a matter of urgency, must do what they say they want to do. Politicians don't come around and say, I'm going to build castle, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. At the end of the day, and they get into the position and start giving excuses. That is not a way to go, because as long as these people continue to lose faith, it continues to undermine our democracy. And if the democracy is undermined, people will start looking for alternative. And alternative they might look for might not be the one that would serve us in the long run as a country.
Well, there are two things here. People losing faith in the politician who promises and reneges on their promises. And now we have, on the other hand, the electoral body itself, the empire. Now, people seem to have more doubts on the electoral umpire than the politician, noting that the politician acts based on whatever the electoral umpire throws on the table. How right is that?
I don't think that is correct. And the reason is this. Just like I mentioned earlier, the electoral umpire has witnessed a lot of reform over time in terms of amendments and adjustments, in terms of their rules, guidelines, and even amendment to the enabling act.
We'll get there.
So that tells me that there are changes that are occurring over time. But maybe what I see is that the electoral umpire itself is not doing good enough job in making the people understand that they have the capacity to do this job. And maybe when we see instances where maybe people are, the process is subverted, or people perceive that the process is not doing well the way it ought to do, they tend to look at the umpire as, no, this umpire is compromised. And what I expect that the umpire should be able to come out to tell the people that, look, these are the process, these are the guidelines, these are the rules. A case in sight is what we had during the 2023 election about the IRF, where you have the umpire saying that the IRF is not a mandatory part of the electoral process. It's just a guideline for election transparency. Now, all of these are things that make people to look at the electoral umpire and say, no, why are we having this double standard? And the electoral umpire has a duty to enlighten and educate the people. And if what the people are insinuating is correct, to correct that as quickly as they can, so as to build the confidence of the people in the process. I must tell you that the confidence of Nigerians in the process might not be what you call 100%, but most people who also clamor today for local government elections and the rest, they are saying, give it to INEC. And that's because they feel INEC seems to have a bit more credibility than the State Electoral Commission. So it tells me that we can only get better as we go on.
We can get better. You talked about the IREV and the beavers and all that. Yeah, we're shifting to the solutions now. We've attempted reforms as a country before, especially with the Electoral Act 2022 that brought about the IREV, the beavers, and all that. But experts still talk about unresolved issues with these innovations. Do you have an idea of some of these unresolved issues that may, have emanated from the Electoral Act 2022? And then we're also looking at having an Electoral Act 2025.
The introduction of the beavers during the tenure of Attairu Jiga, for me, was a master stroke. It really curbed the issue of overvoting and all of these games that were played during elections. And that, for me, is something that we can improve on as much as possible. The IRF Innovation Tool is a very good one. But how do we imbibe all of this electronic system? How do we imbibe it into the law? Because as they stand today, they are all guidelines. And INEC will tell you there's a difference between the guidelines and the enabling law that stipulate the process it has to go through during the election process. So how do we get to incorporate all of this in the electoral law such that it will become a duty, to become a responsibility, and anybody who fails to do his responsibility, starting from the polling unit, would know that there is a sanction that awaits him or her. If we have that in our laws, and there are no longer guidelines that INEC could choose to use or not to use, then I think that will help our system to a great extent.
Is it rocket science?
No. This is not rocket science.
Why are we making it? Why does it seem it's difficult to achieve?
It's not difficult to achieve. It's just that there are too many bureaucracy, the way I see it. That is one. Then there are other interests who look at the process and say, there's also the issue of capacity. Because INEC might also be looking at, okay, if we have this incorporated in the Enabling Act of INEC, can we stand what will come out as a result of the litigation if people decide to challenge this in court? Can INEC defend all of those things? And this speaks to the issue of capacity too. So INEC must build its capacity such that it can live up to that expectation of Nigerians.
We're talking about the people and the electoral body INEC. But there's come to a point in the country where politicians believe so much in the courts winning elections than the INEC itself.
Well, one of the things I know about the courts is it's what you present to the courts that you get out from the courts. I mean, the courts, just like one of the reverse sons said, that it's not a Father Christmas. It doesn't just turn out any judgment to you. You ask for something, it looks at it on its merit, and it gives a judgment based on what the law says. So I think for me, the courts, yes, have been used in different ways. And our legal people in the Temple of Justice now, most of them understand how to use the court and the law. They know the loopholes within these laws, and they know how to take advantage of it in favor of their clients. These are all the things that I think, and INEC on its own side must be able to identify these loopholes too. And if they're able to identify these loopholes, how do they plug it? Okay, talking about electoral, you mentioned earlier that there might be Electoral Act 2025.
Yeah.
And I do say that, we cannot afford to start changing the goalpost towards when we're about to
have elections.
This should be something that would have started far earlier. Now, this is 2025. We are less than 2 years to the election. And I'm not sure that we have gone far in terms of whatever amendment is to be done. So if you bring anything into the system today, there are people who will challenge it and say, you are doing this to disenfranchise some people or to favor some people or some political parties. And that, for me, is not appropriate. We should do whatever it is we have to do in good time before the electoral process starts in itself.
Well, you said so much about these gaps there, despite the fact that, there's some positives too. But when you look at these gaps, they seem to directly feed into the apathy, by making people doubt the process. Yes. They also make people doubt the fairness of the system.
Yes.
So what principles do you think should be imbibed for future reforms?
Okay, first thing, we need to clean up the voters register.
We need to clean it up.
It needs to be cleaned up. I mean, there is a
start afresh.
Well, maybe not start afresh, but there is a need to identify who is still around to vote, or who is in the locations they are supposed to be to vote. The voters register needs to be cleaned up. I think that is one thing that is fundamental. That is one. Two, we must apply the stick and carrot.
Okay.
In the sense that there must be punishment for electoral offenses. And there must be a body that will be saddled with the responsibility of ensuring that people who commit electoral offenses are prosecuted and sanctioned accordingly. Then the third one is there must be internal party democracy. Parties must be organized in such a way that people will be able to believe in what they bring out as standard bearers. Their integrity and all of that will be such that can be vouched for. And that all of these things I've said cannot be done except you have a system where you have bodies that are saddled. As it starts today, INEC is saddled with all of this duty. But INEC obviously have shown over time that they do not have the capacity to do all of this. And that is the reason why I keep going back to the fact that we must, as a matter of urgency, look at the waste panel report and pick some of those things that are in there. We must also look at the aspect of the electoral, political actors. How do we ensure that the political actors comply with the law? Because the political actors, in this case, I'm talking about the politicians, they want to win whichever way. They are not, if they can circumvent the process, yes, they will do that. How do we ensure that everybody plays by the rule? We must have political actors who are ready to conform with the law. And if they do not, there will be sanction. If they do not, they will be detected and then sanctioned accordingly. And not just sanctioned for the political actor, for the political parties also that presented such a candidate. Until we start doing all of this, I also want to take it further. You know, I mentioned this earlier. We must look at, because for me, I think about 5 million or thereabout of voters in this country do not vote based on the fact that they are on one duty or the other on election day. You talk about those in the media. You talk about those in the medical life support sector. You talk about the security sector. Can we have what you call early voting for such people? Even the INEC staffs themselves, they are supposed to vote. They are Nigerians. No, so can we have early voting, or can we have a system whereby they could also participate in it? Because a number of these people, a whole lot of these people who have informed opinion of deciding where the elections swing are disenfranchised and they are not voting too. So all of this contributes to the fact, and until we're able to address all of these issues, then we can think.
Do you also consider political interference?
Interference from?
By asking, how independent is INEC?
Okay, that's an interesting question now. INEC, by virtue of the law, is an independent organization.
Supposed to be.
It is an independent.
But funded by government.
It's an independent organization. Its funding comes from a first-line charge.
Okay.
INEC does not require the president to give approval for his spending. It only requires the Senate or the legislative body to approve its budget, and then it comes in a first-line charge. Now, for me, I think that question has to do with who is heading INEC. Okay. The person, his character, his antecedent. Is it a person of himself, or a person that looks at the body language of the person or of the president or the powers that be? Those are the things. And also, you know, the waste panel report recommended a process of appointing an INEC chairman, which the political system have really jettisoned. I think we should look at that too, so we could have a lot more competition in terms of having credible personnel or persons in that position. For me, that issue of independence speaks to the character of the person that is in the saddle as INEC chairman. And until we have people who can stand firm, people such as Attairu Jiga, until we have such people in position, I don't think we can solve that problem. We will always be having the problem of somebody who is always watching the body language of Mr. President.
Having doubts as electorates.
Exactly. Well, that's, you mean the electorates having doubts about
the management or the administration of
yes.
INEC.
You see, I remember when Professor Attairu Jiga was INEC chairman, when he was recommended, and there was this this euphoria everywhere. Everybody was comfortable with it. Everybody said yes. This what
because
you call
his antecedents
a
and
square
because
peg.
of his person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is a square peg in square hole.
Yeah.
We must have that kind of process. And you can, some of the things you might take away from former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, but that was spot on. Now the question is, how many politicians are ready to do that? You had a late president, Musa Yar'Adua, who came out to say, yes, I know the process that brought me in, the 2007 election was flawed, and instituted a panel to look at electoral reforms. And that panel sat and submitted a report. And they worked on the report, even though they did not take everything hook, line, and sinker. But it impacted on the process. And then you had a former president, Goodluck Jonathan, who came and recommended and appointed an Attairu Jiga, who also, for me, did a very good job in the saddle. Until we have such politicians who look at the system as a system that continuously needs to be bettered. And not just for their own sake, for their own benefit, but for the collective good of our democracy and for the collective good of Nigerians, and for it to be able to throw up candidates and people and politicians that will do what exactly they have said they'll do.
Yeah, we've been talking about voter apathy here, and I still want to say that civic education is also key to this. Then, what is the role of the National Orientation Agency? They seem to be too quiet, too silent. You know?
If you ask the National Orientation, I'm not speaking for them, but most time they will tell you funding is their problem.
Major problem.
And for me, I ask the question: if funding is a problem, why are you in office if you cannot get your job done? But beyond that, for me, we have, before now, that's before 1999, we had NGOs and civil society organizations who were at the forefront of promoting voter education and getting people to get to know what they're supposed to do and how and when. That has dwindled to a great extent. We don't have much of that anymore. And I think we should look at how government encourage such civil society organizations to push. You mentioned Yaga Africa.
Yeah.
Beyond Yaga Africa, how many other civil society organizations like that are in the field and very active too? You know, so I think beyond government institutions such as media houses and National Orientation Agency, like you have mentioned, we should see civil society organizations, NGOs, also pushing this narrative and enlightening Nigerians. So
as we wind down, Abidemi from Ikire is asking this question. It says, what about compulsory voting? It was proposed but withdrawn.
That would not be called, that would not be democracy. It will not be democracy anymore. When you say people must vote, you see, people deliberately refusing to vote is also a demonstration of their voting rights.
Yeah.
So if somebody say, I don't have confidence in the system and I'm not going to vote, it's a demonstration. Yes, it's a protest in itself. And it is for the state and the organization that is saddled with that responsibility to go on and convince them on why they must or they should vote.
All right, Chooks from Iworo is saying, how can young people get involved? Of course, young people are already getting involved.
Yes, you have the not too young to run bill, but the truth about it is politics in Nigeria is a very expensive business. Very, very expensive. And I think that's also an area that needs to be addressed. The role of money in politics. Today, money is taking the front seat in our politics. People who have been in politics for quite some time, they have the character, they have the intellect, they have the track record of doing what is right. They don't get to be standard bearers of political party. Because they don't have the money, which is most unfortunate. I think those are areas that also needs to be addressed.
Okay, so in 10 seconds, how do we rebuild trust overall?
In rebuilding trust overall, one, INEC has a duty to enlighten Nigerians, to make sure that the process are foolproof and that the process, these guidelines you have, you call them guidelines, and you say they are not something that are binding by law. You must look at how do you incorporate them into the law. So that will give people confidence to say, look, if you don't fulfill this, we can hold you responsible. And same applies to those who are actors within the system.
Thank you so much, Isiaka Babatunde Adigun Gbadamosi, for featuring on the agenda this morning. Thank you for those insightful discussion.
Many thanks for having me.
Right. Before I go, electoral reform is not just for experts. It's about all of us reclaiming our democracy. Let's keep this conversation going. Do follow us on all our social media platforms on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. The handle is @Dominion Broadcast. On the app X, it is @DominionCast. You can visit our website at www.dominion.org.ng. My name is Chike Ubo. Stay safe, stay positive, and best wishes.